Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It is so good to be here and to be among you all and to just hear your voices and see your faces. So I'm just taking a moment to just just make connection and say hello. Yeah. It is an honor to be with you, to be among you. Um, and I'm just taking a moment to just like feel my feet on the ground, just to feel my breath as I stand up here and invite you to do the same. And actually, if you feel called to even closing your eyes, I want to invite you to just feel your body as it is being held in your seat. And you might even sense your feet making connection with the ground beneath you. You might even imagine little root fingers growing through the soles of your feet. And so, this relationship that we have with gravity is Earth really just holding us. And at any moment, we can really just tune in and to receive that embrace and feel that we are here and now and alive. And that we are a part of this vast network of intelligence and relationship that pulses through our body and that can be felt in the air against our skin and the way that we take that in through the breath and give it back. And so I welcome you to just open your eyes and look around, and you might even notice the way that the light dances with the shadow in the room, different colors that pop out to you, and you might even just make connection with somebody next to you. Um, yeah, and this really just supports us to come into a living presence with the moment and with our bodies and with our breath. And it really helps me, especially being in a space where I've got a mic in front of me and a podium, and I usually enjoy my days in the woods. So this is a little new, and I just appreciate the opportunity to be here with you all. And I have to work this little gadget. Oh, there we go. All right. So the topic for today that we're offering is seasonal living, a pathway to intimacy with the natural world. Um, and this is the heart work that we offer that Michelle and I have been really integrating into our life by giving ourselves to earth and to nature and to explore what we have to learn in relationship with the rest of life. So this topic today comes from our own kind of learnings and experiences in the natural world. And I want to start with a quote by Howard Kleinbell. The rhythms of nature underlie all human interaction, religious tradition, economic systems, cultural and political organization. When these human forces betray the natural psychic pulse, people and societies get sick, Earth is exploited, and entire species are threatened. And of course, we feel that each in our own way today. And so the majority of humans no longer live in accordance with the natural laws and rhythms of nature. So, in the pursuit of so called progress, we have become severed from the body of Earth and severed from our own bodies because our bodies are interwoven into the landscape of the larger bodies. We're biologically interwoven. And so when we're cut off from nature and this larger body of Earth, we're actually cut off from the intelligence of our bodies and the way that we interact with the universe beyond just human centrism. And as a result of systems of oppression, extraction, exploitation, a vast majority of people are no longer living in direct relationship to the natural world. Even when we think about where we get our food, I heard somebody share gardening, Claire, and just the gift it is to return and to touch the earth in those ways where your feet are touching, your bare feet are touching the ground, and that so many people are disconnected from that way of knowing and being in relationship with life. So this overculture isn't designed for our thriving, as we know, and we feel the disconnection. It creates impoverished conditions of monotony, separation, anxiety, dis-ease, and this keeps us locked into silos of disconnection and fear. So when we feel alone, we feel separate from other beings. When we don't have that community, of course we feel afraid. And we're cut off from the source of our true sustenance, our true power, which is Earth and each other. And so I know all of us are here because we feel the call to repair our relationship with the world and to restore intimacy with that which gives us life, that which gives us the power, that sense of empowerment. And seasonal living is one pathway to do that, which is what this is about, how seasonal living can help us step into that power and to restore that relationship and intimacy. And so when we're nurturing nature, we actually learn to be nurtured by nature. Nature shows us, when we show up to nature to nurture that relationship, nature literally shows us how, and shows us how to be nurtured. And this nurturing and being nurtured by nature is the ecological circle that we return to. And it brings us back into that spiritual closeness with the earth that we long for. Okay, I think I said all those things. All right. But I guess just one thing to point out, which is probably pretty obvious, is the circle being split apart. That's kind of like the feeling, right? That being split apart, fragmented. And that we live in a culture that is really oriented toward linearity, as though like life is this journey of upward progress that starts here and ends here, and that's the end of it. Whereas nature really reveals that life moves in a continual circle and that everything feeds into everything else. Okay, so what is seasonal living? I mean, I've already gotten into some of it. But more than anything, what I've learned is that seasonal living is really an apprenticeship with the natural world. It's an apprenticeship with nature. So it's about paying attention and saying that and recognizing that Earth, you are my teacher. Earth, you are this presence, this living presence of intelligence that I have something to learn, that there's something about this relationship that matters and is important for healing and growing and becoming more whole. It's also a dance with time and a dance with the cyclical movement, the rhythm of living systems that we get to witness when we are interacting with the natural world, like in the gardening. You know, if we garden, we witness those life processes unfolding. It's a practice of flowing with the river of change that is life. So life is just a continual movement of change. And so nature, when we're out in the natural world, we really witness that in a deep way. Um, and finally, it's also a way of reorienting toward the regenerative processes of life that shape our experiences. So regeneration in the sense of death, the life, death, rebirth process, that there is wisdom in the natural processes of regeneration that require that things fall away, that things change. All right, so everyone should have received this piece of paper. And I thought y'all would appreciate actually having the map in case you want to look at it further. But this is a template of seasonal time that combines, that's rooted in the zodiac as well as the Irish pagan wheel of the year. So some folks might be familiar with it. So just to say that that's where it comes from. Part of the practice for me is going back to my ancestral roots and finding ways that my ancestors were in relationship with the natural world. And this really kind of demonstrates that to some degree. And so you can see and follow the cycle based on the seasons. You've got the winter solstices on the vertical axis. You've got the autumn equinox and spring equinox on the horizontal axis. And then you've got the cross quarters in between. And there's, it's really interesting when you map it onto the zodiac wheel because the winter solstices and equinoxes align with the cardinal cross at 0 degrees. And I won't go all into that because that's a whole other topic, but if anyone wants to geek out on that, I'd be down for that. But really, I wanted to show you this and bring this in just so that you can get a sense of that movement and flow and rhythm of the natural world as it relates to the seasonal cycle. And I wanted to invite us to do, I think it should be a short activity, but I want us to just feel and embody this movement so that we can sense it inwardly, right? So we are living organisms, we are beings ourselves, and it's helpful sometimes to embody a practice where we get to feel and sense, oh, this is what's happening right now. So you can, everything's optional and invitational. So if you don't want to participate in this activity, just you get to enjoy watching other people do it. But I'm going to have Michelle come up to kind of model the activity. And what we're going to do is pretend like we're little seeds, slowly unfurling and awakening to life and coming into full bloom, full expression, and then slowly perhaps giving some fruit or gift, and then descending back into the earth, back into rest. And this mirrors the seasonal cycle. And so you can stay seated if you decide you want to do that, and the curling just happens in your seat, and the opening happens staying seated. And if you feel really inspired and you want to get on the floor and really get like down like Michelle's going to and really get up high, then, just follow whatever is there and how you're feeling inspired to engage with this. Okay, so you're a little seed, and you're tight and constricted in the seed. And it's winter and it's cold and you're resting. And you're just resting here, right? Winter's all about hibernation and conserving energy. So you're folded inward and resting. Just notice what it's like to rest. And then the sun, the warmth of the sun penetrates into the soil and starts to stir you. So just start to notice what it's like to wiggle and squirm. And actually, maybe you might even find pleasure in it. What way does your body want to move and stir? And what does that awaken in you as you start to stir and stretch And you realize, oh, I'm the shell. No, I need to push away the shell. I'm outgrowing the confines of my shell that once felt safe is now no longer. And so you come open and out of the shell and you rise through the soil and you're making your way. And it takes a lot of energy, this beginning momentum that starts to unfurl as you begin to take that energy down into the roots, up into your stems, and you start to explore and expand outward, and you start to notice life around you, expanding, growing, feeling the light, the warmth expand. And yeah, you're stretching. Like, it feels really good to stretch after being constricted. It's like, yes, please, whatever you got to do. We're also humans. So you really want to feel what it's like to be a human stretching right now, bringing light and warmth into your body. Yes, yes. Okay, so we're in the height of summer, giving our light, our flower selves. We're blossoming and blooming. And look, we get to look around at one another and see our colors shining bright, wiggling. We're flowing in the air, dancing flowers. Yes, amazing. And there's a song, oh yeah, I'm feeling people being like, love this feeling, free and alive. Okay, cool. So we're giving our gifts, whatever those gifts are. And as we give, we start to relax. The gift of life is to, that is what we're called to do, to give. And then we give and we return. So now we return back to the source of our sustenance, back to where we came from, back to origin. And we find our way back down, relaxing, exhaling, falling back down into the earth, into the depths of winter's sleep. And here we rest a little while again. All right. So we just made our way through an entire year. That was really quick. Thanks for entertaining that activity. I hope you felt like, yeah, I hope you felt the shift. And I guess that's kind of what we're going to move into next is I want you to turn to somebody who's next to you, or at least this is the invitation, to, oh wait, I have a slide for this one. So we just moved through the wheel. We just moved through the seasons. And I'm curious, as you were unfolding, as you were unfurling in that arc of movement, where would you say we are in the arc of that movement that you just did? Where are we right now collectively in the seasons? So the invitation is to turn to your neighbor, little group, and just share what came up for you. What did you notice in your body and your being as you did that practice? And where would you pinpoint in that movement flow where we currently are in the seasons? And you might even share, what are you noticing around you outside in the seasons? Is there something that you've been like really appreciating and excited about, seeing as though we're entering into March? What is that for you? So take just the next couple minutes and to see what comes through, and you can work with anything I just offered. So we'll take one more minute. All right. I love how much energy there is. This is a good conversations are happening. There's lots to celebrate in what's happening and unfolding in the year and in just this particular season. There's so much life. There's so much joy unfurling. I wish I was a little like maybe a fly. I don't know. I wish I was in each group just hearing what was being shared. But I guess actually I would love to invite anyone if there's something that was inspiring or something that just that stood out to you in what was being shared in your group. I would love to hear maybe one or two things, something that was said that stands out. Yes, please.
Sure. We had a really rich conversation, and I think there's also this remembering in the body of this is March 2023, and it's been 3 years, since COVID hit the U.S. And so feeling that, and also realizing 3 years ago, even though there was so much panic and fear and death, that it was also this time of like being present to blossoms opening and being at home, like putting my hands in the dirt and being with my daughter and taking walks every day. And so there was this presentness that we were both speaking of that really, when we were forced to stop all of the busyness of the disconnect in terms of the cycles of work and life and parenting, we slowed enough to get back into the rhythm of the earth.
Yeah, thank you so much for naming that. Yeah, just how life, the human-centric life has picked up again. That moving full speed, production, producing, going, and how that pause, that coming back to stillness, coming back to self, to earth, really allowed you to feel that sense of connection and embodiment that you're recalling and remembering. Thank you. Does anyone else have anything that they want to share? Please.
I think about the cycle of being like the mind of what's
Yes.
and putting that down after years, after walking home, that
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that reflection that, oh, you're right. Nature reflects to us our own nature, our own inner nature, the patterns, the movements that it's not sustainable to continually give of ourselves without taking rest, without returning to the source where we then rejuvenate and receive that energy that only comes with pausing and stillness that you're talking about. Thank you. Was there something else you wanted to add? EB, is there something?
Yeah, I mean, I was just feeling doing the practice helped me think about how the cycle moves and then the gift is one small part of it, but you need the whole cycle to energize
Mm.
and experience the gift more fully.
Mm.
It's too much to give all the time, which makes me so excited about expressing.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, and what you're speaking to, what that brings up for me is this idea that the entire cycle is a gift. So we are gifted by the cycle itself, and then in turn learn how to give in a way that regenerates life. I love that. Thank you. Beautiful. Please, yeah. Hmm. Yes. Yeah, what you're naming is that, and this is really what we're getting at is when we go into nature and start to pay attention to what's happening, they become anchors. I love that you use that word, anchors, to help us to understand where we are in the cycle and what's unfolding and how we're a part of that. And there is an almanac, and I'll tell you about it afterward, or to everyone. There is a very specific Piedmont almanac that I don't think, and I thought to bring it. Um, Anyone who's interested in wanting to know about that, let's talk, and I'll make sure that we have each other's contact information because it's very specific to the Piedmont, which is very cool. And it does go week by week throughout the year what you can expect to start seeing. Now, what's interesting and is that we're living in a climate changed future, and those things are going to start to change and shift, and paying attention to those shifts is where it gets really interesting, right? How climate change is impacting our local ecosystems. All right.
There's one comment from
Yes.
on the live stream says, curious with gradual growth and being excited for learning opportunities and the cyclical nature of self-development.
Yeah, I love that. That's the inner self development that has cycles. Yeah. Thank you. Who was that?
Kelly Thomas.
Thank you, Kelly. All right, so through seasonal living, as we are exploring together, nature teaches us how to be alive, how to be here and now, responsive and engaged, empowered and connected, empathic and moved by all that is changing and shaping us. So there's a few teachings that I wanted to offer here, teachings that I've witnessed and experienced, and there's so many more. The teachings are quite endless, but just to name a few, the first is this idea of ebb and flow, that nature teaches us that everything moves in a spiral or wave formation. Everything, everything does that. So there's this movement that we can rely on, that we can almost find security in, not in the security of, oh, I somehow know how something's going to turn out, but security in the sense of I can trust that when something reaches a peak, it will come down into a restful state. I can trust the timing of things because nature reveals to me, the seasons teach me that there's a timing for everything. And that there is no beginning or end. There's just no beginning or end, and thus there's nowhere to ever arrive to. We're always in process. We're always becoming. Wholeness is in itself a process. And as an extension of nature, our systems are designed to be in harmony with these oscillating rhythms, which is what we're talking about, what you have already shared. And so these oscillating rhythms between rest and flow, rising and falling, movement and stillness. The next is regeneration, which has already been mentioned, but this idea that death is a portal to life. And in this overculture that we are swimming in, so much of how we orient toward death is that it's something to be feared. But nature teaches us that death is just a portal to the next iteration of life itself. And so there's wisdom in the death process. And when you go out in nature and you see death, it's so beautiful because Earth receives everything. Nothing goes to waste. There's a place for all of us. There's a place for every part of the process. And also, it teaches us how to trust and be with the unknown, how to lean into the discomfort of uncertainty, because that is, we're always on the edge. We're always on the cusp of the unknown, always. And so nature really helps us to be with that, to lean in. The next one is embodiment. Spending time in nature supports a natural state of nervous system regulation. So when we're constantly inundated by the sights and the movement and the sounds of kind of consumer human-centric culture, it's inherently dysregulating to our nervous system because of the pace, because it's so up here when really our nervous system needs to go like this. So when we're out in nature, immediately within 5 minutes, our biochemistry begins to change. Everything begins to relax and settle. We feel more at peace, more at home within ourselves. And actually, this mind, heart, body coherence starts to take place. And when we start to experience that kind of integrated wholeness, we actually have access to more intuitive wisdom and knowledge because our bodies are living, breathing kind of receptors to life, and nature helps open that up. And when we're oriented in more kind of human-centric ways of being, the tendency is to live mostly up in our heads and in the thinking brain. So we spend a lot of time thinking about like, oh, what's going to happen, and worrying and thinking about the tasks and the to-dos and where I have to go and all of this. Whereas when we start to relax and settle into the gut brain, open our senses, the heart opens, we soften into presence, we're receiving actually so much more information. And that information is coming through, and there's intuitional knowledge that we're receiving in different ways. And this leads to then this idea of interbeingness, right? Interbeing that isn't just a concept, but then becomes felt. We're human beings, not human doings, as some people say. And so when we start to drop into the body intelligence, when we start to reorient our life toward natural processes, this felt sense of interbeing and connection with the whole of life starts to unfold within you. And this is where you start to see yourself as a part of something so much larger. And then the last one is generosity. And that just inherently comes naturally in this, as we're following, the ebb and flow, embodiment, interbeing, everything comes back around when we're giving to the circle of life. When we're giving our gifts, we know we're giving them and they're being received. And then as the circle goes, whatever we're giving, it will come back to us. And it's not about coming back to us necessarily, but that's just the way it is. We're interwoven. So we give our gifts and we all expand and benefit in return. So here are some embodiment shifts that we start to experience when we are in the natural world and we start orienting to the seasons and we start sensing into the ebb and flow. So, the rushing around and staying busy is an addictive state of being, and it's designed that way, right? So when we learn to give more of our attention and awareness and presence in nature, that just slowly, that starts to settle down a little bit. We slow down and start enjoying the present moment. This reliance on quick convenience and getting things now turns into patience, deliberation, and the gift that comes with restraint, not getting what you want when you want it. Scarcity mentality and not enoughness turns into gratitude. Gratitude for the cycles of abundance that we are in fact provided for, that everything we need always arrives in the right timing, especially when we're rooted in community and we're having our needs met. Control and trying to have things figured out on a mental kind of like intellectual level turns into surrendering and knowing that there's nothing to figure out mentally. That we're not trying to get somewhere. It's actually about appreciating being here and now fully, because we are only ever here and now. Like now is the only moment that ever is. And how can we be here more fully now then? Forcing things to happen according to, my idea of a timeline turns into listening for right timing and trusting the process, because nature teaches us what that is. And our intuitional knowledge, intelligence strengthens. So we begin to actually sense right timing. Fear of missing out or falling behind turns into being centered and immersed in the experience with life right now. So again, we're not trying to get somewhere. We're only ever right here. So it's about being fully here. So there's nothing really to miss out on. Rigid routines and ways of being, transform into more flexible routines, allowing for spontaneity and things to just emerge. I'm not going to read through the rest just for time's sake. I think it's on the piece of paper. So ultimately, seasonal living nurtures belonging, and a living future holds the capacity to nurture belonging and support the diversity of life through systems of generosity, cooperation, and care. Seasonal living nurtures a way of life toward these conditions of abundance, diversity, intimacy, and health by weaving us back into this participatory relationship. We're participants. We're not just observers and witnessers. We're actually engaging and being curious and playing. And so there's a few additional pieces that I wanted to name that have already to some degree been mentioned, but in different ways. So this idea of energy goes where attention flows. So when we give our curiosity and loving attention to the natural world and the personhood of place, when we recognize that we are in a living system, we are gifted in return. So the repair process is already underway. So that where we put our attention matters. It feeds us. And this idea of, within 5 minutes of being in nature, everything starts to change in our biochemistry. The brain starts to change, the heart rate slows, facial muscles relax, all of that. We are sensitively shaped and honed by place as we give our attention to place. So again, we relax into the body, And literally, the intelligence of the ecosystem begins to extend into our bodies because we are Earth. So, ecological modes of perception that were previously lying dormant begin to awaken. Intuitive muscles that were present in childhood that were likely not validated come back online. So I think each of us can remember back when we were children, there were certain intuitions, certain ways of being that were just natural. And that over the course of becoming encultured, we are told, conditioned along a certain path, right? So nature helps us reclaim some of that intuitional knowledge that was lost. And I really like this quote by Octavia Butler that is, everything you touch changes, everything you change changes you. So this idea that we're participants in something larger and that in touching it, we are shaped in responsiveness to and with it. And the living world calls the body-mind, this body-mind, home into felt presence. So there's this also awakening to the fact that the mind isn't separate from the body, that the body is actually an aspect or a dimension of the mind. And so that we can think. Thinking with the heart is different than thinking with the gut or through the gut. Thinking, what is it like to think with your hand, for example, right? So we can think with different parts of ourselves. And we discover that there is a conversation taking place that isn't happening with words. And so I think we kind of experienced that together when we were all embodying the seed coming into life. We were experiencing that nonverbal conversation, and that there was sighs and sounds and expansive openness. And so there's this acknowledgement that there are other ways to communicate and be in relationship with life that isn't verbal and isn't intellectual. There's a rhythm and a dance that we're a part of. Again, it comes back to the rising and the falling, the darkness and the light. And so when we become participants in this seasonal unfolding and we return to the ecological circle of life, we are nurturing that relationship and being nurtured by nature in return. And this supports coming back into intimacy with ourselves, with one another, with Earth as a whole, and it starts to feel like, oh, we belong here. Like there's some, like wisdom's flowing through, right? There's gifts that I have to give. I don't have to question my place here. There's something that wants to come through the vessel of my being, and Earth and nature wants to receive it. And all of life is going to benefit when I'm in alignment with the whole of life, and I can give myself in the best way I can, because energy is flowing as I follow and trust the timing of my life unfolding in relationship to everything else. And then we come toward the end with a final quote by Barbara Marciniak. And I really like this one. She says, "Feel Earth as your home and act on making it a better place. Acknowledge that you, as a biological being, have the emotions, feelings, and intuitional knowledge that connect you to Earth. Your biology establishes roots that keep you connected with who you are. As you learn to tune into Earth, you will feel the changes transpiring. Earth is providing you with an opportunity to extend the knowledge of your roots and to connect the very essence of life, to connect to the very essence of life." So depending on the time, a little more time, I do have kind of like a fun way to end that is inspired by this picture, the starling murmuration, which I'm sure many of us have seen. It's just so beautiful. So we're just going to see how this goes. But the idea is to create our own sound murmuration, doing an activity that I hope all of us did when we were kids. And it's the making a rainstorm with our hands. And it's kind of like a murmuration where we are individuals making, like sensing into our own ability to make sound and music and feel while tuning into others doing the same thing. So what I'm thinking is we'll go through it around once where it's like, okay, yes, let's practice this, we trial it, and then we let ourselves kind of go and just see what happens as we sense into how we want to make this rain song together. Okay, so it's very, very easy. There are mainly three parts to it. There's the light rain, and you start slow, right? The rain comes on softly, and then it starts picking up. Okay, and then there's soft, and then maybe some of us start to go a bit faster, and then all of us start to go faster, and then some of us start to move to the slight pats, and then larger, louder, louder. Okay, so we've got the technique down. We've got the technique. Now, how, nature follows a pattern, and this is the beautiful thing I think that you were kind of naming earlier, was that things unfold in layers. It doesn't all happen at once. It's like the flowers don't bloom all at once, right? So there's going to be layers. Some of us are going to move into, what do we call this? Snapping your fingers. As some people might still be here. Same is true, as we're snapping our fingers, we might then go to the legs. And so there's a natural progression that we want to feel for. So we're gonna start this together, and we're gonna expand. There's you being you, flowing and doing you, and then there's the group intelligence. There's the collective vibe, right? The starlings, they pay attention to the 7 other birds around them to know what movement to make. That's how it all comes together. So what would it be like to then do this sounding, sense into what's being sung around us, and then we'll just see what happens, where we want to go. We don't have to go like this entirely. We could go like this. Ooh. You know what I mean? So we get to play a little bit. All right, let's try this. No one's following my lead. That was such a nice storm. That was so nice. Okay, thank you, everyone. That's it.